Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Heartway Church. How we feeling? How beautiful was that song? I love our worship team. Let's give them another hand. Incredible. So grateful that we get to come to a place like this every single Sunday and just let out everything that we're feeling and put it all before the throne room and just allow God's presence to fill us and rejuvenate us and replenish us from the inside out. And speaking of inside out, that has been the name of the series that we have been in. A little bit, I think now it's about a month. It's been a month so far, 3 or 4 weeks. And we've got this week and then one more week coming. And this entire series has been all about mental health. And what does it look like to relate rightly and in a healthy manner with our own mind? Because how many of you know your mind sometimes can be your biggest obstacle to overcome? Most of us limit ourselves because of the beliefs that we have and the things that we think to be true. And so we've been talking about what it looks like to be mindful. And today we're going to talk about mindfulness for anxiety. So I want to talk about anxiety, and I want to talk to those of you who deal with anxiety. And maybe you're in this room and you're not necessarily like an anxious person all the time, but even if you're not an anxious person, everybody at some stage or another and in some particular season of their life has known what it's like to experience anxiety. So I like to define anxiety as fear ruling the mind. That's all anxiety is. It's fear ruling the mind. We become anxious when we as human beings try to obsess over things that we cannot control. So for me personally, I have shared a little bit about my struggles with anxiety before. And over the last 5 years, because Heartway Church has been the biggest thing in my life, this has been where my anxiety has resided the most. It's been around the church. And I've kind of shared this a little bit with you before, but thankfully my wife has helped me a lot. In 2019, I really feel like I've made a huge shift. But up to this point, up to just a couple of months ago, a lot of anxiety that I had revolving around Heartway Church. For some reason, I've always just had this fear that Heartway Church is not going to work out. And so that produces a whole lot of other feelings in me of worry and tension and stress, because then I start thinking about the rest of my life and what I'm going to do to make money, because all of my adult life I've been working in church. And sure, I'm working on a doctorate in theology, but what good is that going to be if, I don't get a work in this line of in this field, you know what I'm saying? Because then what is my doctor going to do for me? I'm going to go have to work at Starbucks. Nothing wrong with Starbucks, but, I have a doctorate. So it's kind of like I've been thinking, I get scared about what am I going to do for money? What am I going to do for finances if this doesn't work out? And so I'm so crazy that I already have a full plan, multiple plans that that I have in my mind. Okay, this is how crazy of an anxious person I can be. I already have in my mind all the plans that I'm going to put into action if Heartway doesn't work out. Now, my wife, thankfully, yeah, I know, right? So thankfully, I have my wife who helps ground me. And often, you know what she always tells me? She's like, Danny, you spend so much time and so much energy trying to think about what you're going to do if Heartway doesn't work out, instead of just putting all your energy towards making Heartway work out. You know what I mean? And it's like, you wouldn't even have to be anxious. You wouldn't even have to be so worried all the time if you gave all of the energy and attention to this thing instead of already counting yourself out from the beginning. And what's really crazy is Heartway has been an overwhelming success. But because I've been anxious about some future that doesn't even exist, I'm treating it as if it hasn't been. And so thankfully, I've been making that shift. But earlier on, I would say maybe about 2 years ago, when I was still feeling the anxiety very heavily, I remember I had a friend of mine who was starting a church. And he had a very good life going for him and a very good career going for him before he decided to start a church. He's an older gentleman with a family. He was a lawyer. And he had asked me for some advice about planting a church. And so I heard what he was doing, and I was supportive of him, but because I was so anxious, I projected my anxiety onto him and what he was doing with his church. So I told him, I said, hey man, I'm happy for you. I'm excited. You're going to start a new church. But I'm like, listen, I don't know if you really want to sell your business and like not do that anymore and just put all your chips in this basket. And I started telling him all of the statistics of churches that fail within 3 to 5 years because they're not self-sustaining, and all the just the negativity that I've had in my mind about. I start putting it onto him, and I start telling him, listen, it's important. You may want to have a plan B. Just in case. You may want to have a plan B just in case it doesn't work out, because that's what I was doing for myself. So you may want to have a plan B. And he said something to me that stood out to me, and it really touched me. He said, Danny, the only way this will work out is if my only option is plan A. The only way this is going to work out is if my only option is plan A. If I'm already thinking about a backup plan or how it's not going to work out, I'm counting myself out from the get-go. The only way this is going to work is if I throw myself in it completely. Completely fearless, don't care if I fail, not afraid to take risks. Now, don't get me wrong. It's okay to plan. It's okay to prepare. It's okay to think about your decisions before you make them. But the problem becomes when your anxiety begins to overwhelm you, when it begins to control you, whenever your anxiety now becomes the determining factor in all of your decision making, that's how you know your anxiety has become a problem. When your worry starts to rob you of the peace of mind that God wants for you to have in every moment of every day, that's how you know your worry and your anxiety has become a problem. You see, when anxiety gets crazy, when you start worrying a little too much, you don't see things clearly anymore, because all you're seeing is the worst possible scenario. All you're seeing is everything that could possibly go wrong. And that's a very distorted view of reality. Think about it for a second. Isn't it true that more often than not, things are not nearly as bad as you make them out to be? Typically, the things that we worry about so much are just literally problems that we've created and imagined in our mind that we attach way too much energy and importance to. And so we've got to learn how to let things be what they are, okay? Because a lot of us, we think that worrying about the future is going to help us to prepare for it better, but all it does is make everything worse. That's all it does. Worrying does not change your future. Worrying does not prepare you to tackle the future issues that you have. So something that I'm learning to do is kind of deal with things as they come. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Okay, those are the kind of things you have to start trusting yourself to do. I know for me, I have to trust. This is what I tell myself. I trust that the future version of me will be able to handle whatever issues come at that time. But I don't have to try and predict what those issues are going to be and think that I can totally prepare myself for them beforehand, because that's just not how it works. Some things you have to be thrown into the deep end. You have to be okay taking risks. So, for those of us who are anxious, for those of us who are worried a lot, for those of us who experience that tension and stress because we're always thinking about everything that could go wrong, I want to read to you a story this morning from the Gospel of Luke. It's the story of two sisters. Their names are Martha and Mary. So if you look up at the screen with me, or you can follow up in the Bible app since we got one TV down. But here's what it says in Luke chapter 10. Now, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her and said, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing, and Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. So Jesus shows up. This very prominent rabbi in the community shows up into the home of Mary and Martha. Martha wants to get things ready. So she's doing the respectable, honorable, hospitable thing to do. If you have a guest over, you should probably clean up. So she's fixing things, she's cleaning things up, she's preparing. But she's obviously really, really stressed as she's doing all of this. And it's not that Martha was doing anything bad. In fact, what she was doing in preparing the house was good. But there was one thing that Martha wasn't doing. She wasn't being present. And according to Jesus, the one thing that is needful, the one thing that matters more than anything, is that you are fully present, fully engaged in every present moment. Why? Because you cannot be anxious and fully present at the same time. It's an impossibility. You can't be, because anxiety is you creating problems that don't exist in the future. So if you're creating problems in a future that doesn't exist, you're totally not present to what's happening in your life right in front of you in this moment right now. You can't be anxious and fully present at the same time. And so anytime you're experiencing a lot of tension, a lot of stress, a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety, that is your sign that in that moment there's way too much future and not enough presence. What Jesus says Mary had was that presence. And that's the one thing that cannot be taken away from her. In that fully present mode of life and way of being, you find a fullness of joy. You find peace. You find happiness. I love how it says Martha was distracted by her many tasks, because that's how most of us live. We're distracted by all the things we have to do. We think our worth comes from how busy we are. So we're always doing things, and we're worrying and we're stressing out, and we're trying to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. And Christ says, no, there's only one thing that's needful. Don't let your life pass you by being so busy and doing so many things. Just be present. Notice what's happening. Notice God's presence. Notice the love that's in that room. Notice the energy that's being exchanged between you and the other person that's in front of you. Whoever's in front of you is the most important person in the world in that moment. Anybody who you're with, you should treat with the utmost respect. You should give them the greatest honor and dignity. You should look for God within them. Listen to all of the ways that God may be speaking to you in every single situation. But again, there's nothing beneficial that comes from living in a state of anxiety. Nothing beneficial ever comes from that. So think about worry and tension and stress like daydreaming. You know how like sometimes you'll just be looking and then you're just staring at something, and then you just have to snap out of it. Okay, daydreaming. Think about worry and anxiety as daydreaming, and think about being fully present as waking up. That's how it is. Sometimes you have to snap yourself out of it. And you have to realize when you're worried, when you're super anxious, however legitimate you think it is for you to be that worried and stressed and anxious, you're daydreaming. You're daydreaming, and you got to snap out of it, because if you don't snap out of it, that thing will start going on hyperdrive, and it will drive your life absolutely crazy. The answer is always to come back to the present moment and to listen, to listen, to listen. Listen to what life is saying. Listen to what God is saying. Listen to what your heart is saying. You see, it's one thing to be aware that you have anxiety. But it's another thing to be aware of your anxious thoughts as you're experiencing them. Okay, it's one thing to know you're anxious, but it's another thing to become aware of your anxiety in the moment that you're experiencing it. When you can learn how to be aware of your thoughts, what you'll begin to notice is that there is a distinction between you as the observer and the thoughts and emotions in your mind which are being observed. There's a distinction there between you, the observer, your thoughts and emotions, which are being observed. Those two things are not the same thing. This is the distinction that some teachers call the true self versus the false self. The false self is that voice within you of judgment, negativity, criticism, the voice that's always speaking within you that's trying to exclude and separate you from others and categorize and label and jump to conclusions and makes the worst of assumptions. But your true self is the voice of God within you. It's the voice of love. It's the voice of beauty. It's the voice of positivity. It's the uplifting voice that's always trying to get you back on track. When you live from your truest self, when you listen to the voice of God within you, your true self is who you are in God. Your false self is who you think yourself to be. When you live out of your true self, you no longer identify yourself with every thought and emotion that comes into your mind. Which means even though you have a bunch of thoughts and emotions rolling up there, now you're no longer mastered by them. You learn how to create this distance between yourself and your thoughts so that you're no longer trapped by your thoughts anymore. This is what in the Christian tradition for thousands of years, our teachers have called this contemplation, or the more popular word nowadays is mindfulness. Everybody say mindfulness. Mindfulness, okay? Mindfulness, I like to think about mindfulness by using the phrase that the Apostle Paul used in, was it 1 Thessalonians? Or I forget where he uses this phrase. But he talks about the idea of praying without ceasing. Praying without ceasing. That doesn't mean I'm just closing my eyes, praying all day like this. Oh, Father God, this, that, or the other, this, that, or the other, whatever, amen. If you could do that all day, that'd be awesome. But I don't think anybody ever has the time to do that. But praying, what does it mean to pray without ceasing? It means that now prayer becomes your way of life. Prayer becomes your mode of being in the world. Other teachers call it prayer from the heart. It's learning how to sink into that silence that exists beneath your thoughts, which is where the presence of God is found, which is where peace is found, which is where you find your refuge and your safety in that time of trouble. Okay, so I want to read to you a few definitions from some of the greatest Christian thinkers and monastics and mystics who have talked about prayer in this way. So let me show you some of these quotes. This is from St. Gregory the Great in the 6th century. He speaks of prayer or mindfulness as resting quietly in the presence of God. Resting quietly in the presence of God. And again, this is not just in one moment when you're by yourself in your room praying. It's resting quietly in the presence of God as a way of life. You're always in that mode of rest. You're always relaxing into the presence of God. Next one. This is from Evagrius Ponticus. He says, prayer, this is interesting, prayer is the laying aside of thoughts. Most of us think prayer is just one thought after another. I have to keep saying things. I love in Romans chapter 8, Paul says that when we don't have words to pray, that the Spirit prays for us with groanings that we cannot even understand. Okay, so prayer is this laying aside of thoughts. You lay aside your thoughts so that you can sink into this ocean of love and peace and beauty and courage and creativity that exists deep within the depths of your soul. Next one. I love this quote from St. Therese. She says, if I did not simply live from one moment to the next, it would be impossible for me to keep my patience. I can see only the present. I forget the past and I take good care not to think about the future. We get discouraged and we feel despair because we brood about the past and the future. It is such folly to pass one times fretting and worrying all the time instead of resting quietly on the heart of Jesus. What would it look like for us to learn how to rest? You're just always in that mode. You're at peace within yourself. I was telling this, I think, to our folks at Circulate yesterday when we were hanging out. And I was like, when Paul talks about that peace that surpasses all understanding, I want that. I want that. Like, I don't want to do all of this and not be happy with myself. What's the point of the God talk? What's the point of coming to church? What's the point of taking the time to do all of this if we're not learning how to experience the benefit of it in our everyday life? Okay, the promise is peace. That's what Jesus said, peace I leave with you. Not the peace of this world, but the peace that comes from the heart of the Father. I'm giving it to you. It's yours. It's a gift. That's what Jesus came to show us how to access and tap into. And it's not somewhere out there. It's in here within you. But it's you learning how to trust. It takes trust. It takes faith to know that God is going to handle the situation. Whatever it is that I'm facing right now, God is going to take care of this, so I don't have to. I don't have to be the one that figures this out. This is God's business. I leave it to God and I trust in the ways of God. And even when it looks like it's not going favorably for me, I know that if it isn't going well, it's not the end of the story yet. Because with God, the ending is always resurrection. You're going through your crucifixion right now and it doesn't feel good. Hang on. Hang on. You may even descend into hell, like the creeds say, okay? You may even go further down than the cross. But then the resurrection comes. But you have to learn how to pray that prayer that Jesus prayed, which is, take this cup away from me. But nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. It's not my will anymore. You let go of the need to have things go your way all the time. And you learn how to rest quietly on the heart of Jesus. You can't do this if you're stuck in your mind, people. You can't. So many of our problems, it's just because we're overthinking. We're thinking too much. And trust me, I'm a thinker. Anxious people are thinkers. That's why we're anxious, because we see everything. We look at the situation from all angles. It's a gift and it's a curse. But we have to learn, and I'm saying this first person because this is me. This is really coming from my heart. I've always kind of been an anxious person. So you've got to learn how not to get lost in trying to see it from every which way. You've got to learn how to not get lost in your mind creating these fake scenarios that may not even ever come your way. We just rest. Lay aside your thoughts. Rest quietly in the heart of Jesus. And then learn how to develop and cultivate that rest in your everyday life. So here's another definition I love for mindfulness. Mindfulness is paying attention to what's naturally arising in the present moment with kindness and curiosity. Let's read that again. Mindfulness, paying attention. Are you paying attention to what's happening in your soul? Are you paying attention to your habits? Are you paying attention to your thought patterns? Because they're going to tell you a lot about your life. They're going to tell you a lot about what you need to work on. Are you paying attention to your emotions? Okay, your thoughts and your emotions are not your enemy. But you got to learn how to listen to what they're saying. Mindfulness is paying attention to what's naturally arising in the present moment. Whatever it may be, good or bad, with kindness and with curiosity. What does this mean? Everybody can be mindful. Whenever you bring awareness to your thoughts, whenever you bring awareness to your emotions, whenever you bring awareness to your senses, without judgment, without resistance, without clinging, in that moment, you are being mindful. And the more you can learn how to practice mindfulness consistently, the better you will be at learning how to identify all of those reflexive reactions and automatic reactions that you have in life that do not benefit you. The moment you learn how to interrupt those reflexive reactions and those automatic reactions that do not benefit you or other people, then you'll start learning how to better control and manage your behavior and your attitudes. And when you better control and manage your behavior and your attitudes, guess what that's going to produce? A much better and healthier life. And so the goal is for us to learn how to do this. An example that was given to me that I want to share with you. Think about awareness as the sky. And think about your thoughts and your emotions as the clouds in the sky. The goal of mindfulness, what it means to pray without ceasing, what it means to have this contemplative mind, what it means to rest quietly in the heart of Jesus, is to learn how to be that space in which your thoughts come and go. You learn how to be the sky, and you allow your thoughts and emotions as the clouds to simply come and go. You don't cling. You don't resist. You don't judge yourself for the thoughts that you have. You notice, you pay attention with kindness and with curiosity, and then you let go. That's what it means to keep your cool. Really, that's what it means to keep your cool. When somebody's coming at you sideways, when they're saying things to you that are disrespectful, all of a sudden the trigger comes. Now I'm getting pissed off. All these things are saying here. Oh, my mind wants to tell me this is what I'm going to say. Oh, really? You're going to come at me like that? Well, and then, we just start getting angry. And then you start getting lost and you become a different person. I don't like who I am when I'm like that. You know what I'm saying? That's not even really who I am. That's not who you are. That's not your true self. That's why I'm telling you, you have to learn how to be aware of this stuff as you're experiencing it. But that's a little advance. If you're able to become aware of your anxious thoughts and your fearfulness and your judgmentalism as you're experiencing it, that's learning how to pray without ceasing. And that takes time. Okay? And then it takes time for you to move from the struggle of noticing it. Because for a while, for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I really have a lot of stuff I got to work on, man. Because, I've started to notice all my patterns like never before. They call it the church fathers used to call that process purgation. You're being purged in a sense, because you're realizing all of these attitudes and habits that you've developed that are just really, really, really unhealthy. And when you notice it for the first time, because you didn't know it before, that's the problem, is that most people are sleeping. You're sleeping, you're daydreaming. You're not even aware that you have certain issues. You don't even know. So this is about learning how to, what happened? Oh, thank you, bro. Wow. I apologize every week. And then, I have allergies. I'm always sniffing. And finally, I decided to ask my parents, because all this stuff now, I'm about to turn 30, and my body is like breaking down. And my hand, like I have this weird thing happening where my skin is drying up on my hand. All these allergies came out of nowhere. And I asked my dad in the car, I'm like, why do I have all these allergies? And he just started laughing. He's like, oh, man, it's going to get worse. And I said, what? He's like, yeah, I've had that my whole life. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, I'm allergic to everything. I'm like, what do you mean everything? He starts 5 minutes listing all these things that he's allergic to. I said, I'm doomed for the rest of my life. So I guess this is just what I have to deal with. So mindfulness. There we go. Thank you for bringing me back. So, anyhow, what was I talking about? I forgot. We were just talking about daydreaming and all that jazz. Okay, and then thoughtfulness. Okay, awareness. I was talking about awareness. Think of awareness as the sky and think of your thoughts as the clouds. And the goal is to be the sky in which the clouds come and go, to be the space behind your thoughts, to live in that mode of rest. It's kind of like neutrality, just being neutral. You don't always, it's moving yourself away from always reacting. Why are we always reacting? So let's take control of ourselves. That's why in the book of Proverbs it says somebody who has self-control, they're stronger and more powerful than the greatest warrior you know. They're more disciplined than the most powerful, strongest person you may know. That's real strength. That's real power, is to be able to calm your mind and to keep your peace and serenity when everything in your mind is trying to drag you in another direction. And so that's what we're learning how to develop and cultivate through our mindfulness. Let's read this quote here from Richard Rohr. Which Richard Rohr, and I quote him a lot, he's probably right now the most, he's definitely the best living teacher of mindfulness and contemplation within the Christian tradition. Many have come before him, but in terms of people who are alive, Richard Rohr would be one of these folks, and I quote him all the time. Pick up any of his books and you'll take a deeper dive into these things. But here's how he talks about this. Imagine yourself sitting on the bank of a river. Observe each of your thoughts coming along as if they're saying, think me, think me. Watch your feelings come by saying, feel me, feel me. Acknowledge that you're having the feeling. Acknowledge that you're having the thought. Don't hate it. Don't judge it, which is, by the way, what religion has taught us to do. And when we have this idea that God is hating it, and God is judging it, and God is critiquing it in us, of course we're going to do that to ourselves. That makes it worse. That actually gives energy and momentum to that thought that's holding you in bondage. Don't hate it. Don't judge it. Don't critique it. Don't in any way move against it. Simply name it. This is resentment towards so-and-so. Okay. This is a thought about such and such. Okay. Admit that you're having that thought, then place it on a boat and let it go down the river. And the river is your stream of consciousness. It's very simple, but it takes a lot of practice to learn how to do this. But this is for your own benefit. This is for your own gain. I want to show you these steps that I wrote down for being mindful. Okay, 4 easy steps. This is what it means to be mindful. First and foremost, mindfulness begins with acknowledgement, watching your thoughts. Then mindfulness moves into non-attachment. It's detaching yourself from your thoughts, recognizing that you are not your thoughts, creating distance between yourself and your thoughts. Then you got to make sure that you're not judging your thoughts or striving against your thoughts. You're simply letting your thoughts be. And then you just wait patiently. You wait. You have compassion on yourself. Okay, allow yourself to feel what you're feeling in that moment of irritation and anxiety and worry and tension and stress. You have compassion on other people, and you wait on God. Here's what I mean by waiting on God. Okay, let's say something quote unquote bad happens to you, and you're trying to figure out what this is going to mean for your future. And that produces a lot of anxiety. Okay, I just lost my job, for an example. I just lost my job. Holy crap. Now that means, now we're moving into the anxiety. Now, because I lost my job, that means, we don't know what that means yet, but we're attaching meaning to it, right? That means, oh my God, this is going to happen, and then my girlfriend's going to leave me because she's going to think I'm a bum, and then this person is going to do that, and then this is going to happen, and then I'm going to lose my car, and then I'm going to freak out. What are you going to do? Before you know, you have a panic attack. Nothing has happened yet. Nothing has happened yet. Okay, so here's what it is. Instead of attaching meaning in that moment to this event, you just wait on God to bring meaning to that event when the time is right. You probably can't frame this in a positive way right now. You don't know what to do with this right now. Leave it there. Why does it have to have a meaning yet? Why does it have to mean anything? I lost my job. There's the thought. And you wait as you rest quietly on the heart of Jesus for meaning to come. You wait for God to show you what this is going to mean in your life. That's a much better route to take than freaking out and trying to do something about the situation all the time by yourself and creating issues that don't really exist. One more passage of scripture here from the book of Philippians. Pay attention to these words. Don't be anxious. Instead of worrying, pray. And now we know what Paul means by prayer. Pray. Turn that over to God. Hand it over to God. All of the anxiety. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers. Letting God know your concerns. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of your life. This is the promise. This is what all of us are striving for. This is what it means to work out your salvation. It's to learn how to get to this place of trust, this place of faith, where you learn how to allow this sense of God's wholeness to take over. And you start to recognize it. Even if you can't make sense of it in your mind, in your heart, and in your soul, you know this is going to turn out good. I know this is all rigged in my favor. I know this is going to work out for my benefit. It always does. It always does. And that settles me down. It releases me from all of the pressure that I put on myself of having to figure everything out. It really is a wonderful thing. Can't we agree with that last statement? It's a wonderful thing what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of your life. If you don't like the image of sitting on the bank of a river, allowing your thoughts to come, putting the thoughts on the boat and letting it go, then think about it with the illustration of handing these anxieties and worries over to God. That's what you're doing when you're letting go of your thoughts. You're handing them over to God. It's yours. Do with it what you would please. That's it. You're just releasing it and handing it over. Now, as we wrap up, one of the ways specifically within the Christian tradition, but it's not only Christianity, because if it's true everywhere. And so it's not a surprise that other traditions have tapped into this. But one of the earliest traditions in Christianity and in Judaism specifically talks a lot about the importance of breath as a way to be mindful. Breath is actually one of our access points into mindfulness and into the presence of God. In the book of Exodus, when God reveals God's name to the people of Israel, when God reveals God's name to Moses, God gives to Moses a very unique name to represent himself. I want to show it to you. That's the English transliteration. It's 4 letters, YHWH. But in the Hebrew, those are 4 consonants. Yod, He, Vav, He. You can't pronounce that word. Try and pronounce that word. No, not Yod He Vav He, just the YHWH. You can't pronounce it. Right. You can't pronounce it. So, number one, the name of God is unpronounceable. The name of God is unpronounceable. So, that's one thing for us to keep our humility in check. We can't even say the name of God. And you think you know everything God has figured out for all of human history and the universe? No. Okay. The name of God is unpronounceable. That's number one. But the second thing that's cool about this is you can't pronounce this word. You cannot pronounce the name of God. You can only breathe it. YHWH. You can only breathe it. And so rabbis for centuries, many Christians afterwards, started to develop a practice of prayer called the Yahweh prayer, where you inhale, and that inhalation and exhalation is a repetition of the name of God. So, I was going to do it for you, but I'm not going to do it for you. That's why I'm just like thinking about it. Should I do it? No, I'm not going to do it. But anyways, you can only breathe this name. And so the point is, from our very first day of birth to our last day, without knowing it, consciously or unconsciously, we're always speaking the name of God. We're always breathing the name of God. And so all of the mystics in the Jewish tradition and the Christian tradition have said that there's a connection between God and your breath. This is why the Spirit of God in the scriptures is spoken of as the breath of life, the breath of God, the ruach of God. We went over this in the Trinity. There's a connection between God and breath, spirit and breath. Breath is your access point to God. Okay, because the more attention you give to your breath, the less attention you're giving to your thoughts. And the less attention you give to your thoughts, the more attentive you can be to God. That's what it is. So breath is your gateway. Breath is what allows you to be present to the presence. Because think about it. You cannot breathe in the past. Right? There is no such thing as breathing in the past. And you can't breathe in the future. The only place you could ever breathe, the only time you can ever breathe is right now. So isn't that true? Sometimes when things are going crazy, someone's having a panic attack, or things aren't going well, someone has to put their hand on your shoulder and say, hey, bro, just breathe, bro. Now, don't say that when you're arguing with somebody, okay? All right, you don't want to say that. I already tried that with Emily one time. I was like, babe, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. That was years ago, though. Emily's not like that. But yeah. But you guys know how it is. You know, it's like, hey, calm down. Just breathe. You're going to tell me to breathe? Don't do that. But it's true. Sometimes we need to it's so important in the craziness of life, in the stress of life, in the anxieties of life. We got to remember sometimes we need to just take a step back and breathe. Just breathe. This is why all of the great spiritual teachers have said that it is through your breath that you access the presence of God within you. It is through your breath that you can begin to access the kingdom of heaven that dwells within you. So I want to end with just this last quote. The practice is simply this. Keep coming back to your breath during the day. Just take a moment. This will give your mind a steadiness and your breath a gracefulness. There's so much to let go of, isn't there? Your nostalgia and your regrets, your fantasies and your fears, what you think you want instead of what is happening right now. Breathe. So that's how I want to leave us this morning. I don't know what you're facing. I don't know what you're going through. And if you don't need this right now, I'm telling you at some point you will need it. You may not remember all the theology. You may not remember the definition of mindfulness. But you can always remember to breathe. You have to breathe. So just learn next time you're anxious to move your attention away from your thoughts to your breath. And allow every inhale and every exhale to be an opening up, a consenting to the presence of God within you. And bring yourself back. That's what breath is for. It's to anchor you. It's to get you out of the crazy, repetitive loops of thoughts in your mind. You breathe. You connect with your source. You relax. You notice your thoughts. You let them go. And that's how you can learn how to keep your peace in any and every situation. Let's pray. Father, today we acknowledge your presence, the breath of your Spirit that dwells within us. Father, in this morning we bring awareness to our thoughts, to our emotions, to your presence. We desire to be the kind of people who are always being mindful, who are always communing with you in the depths of our souls. God, we ask that you would fill us with courage, fill us with strength and fearlessness, embolden us so that we can take risk and not be held back by our anxiety. And God, remind us that you are closer to us than our very breath. And when life is crazy and we don't know the answers and we're trying to think through things too much, may we find you in our breath. May we rest quietly in the heart of Jesus. And may your peace that surpasses all understanding overwhelm our soul. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. Love you guys. Thank you for being here.